What's up, fam? It's Calla from Recalibrate, back with episode 10 of the Lighten Up podcast. On today's episode, we have my friends Becky and Bridget from the Save Our Children podcast, which is an awesome podcast. They're doing really important work to share the stories of survivors, to shed light on the darkness that is sex trafficking, pedophilia. They talk a lot about conversations with their own children and how to talk to their kids about things like sex or porn or things like that. So we get into a lot of that in this episode together. I think this episode is going to be really beneficial for everyone, but particularly parents and parents who are raising kids in this 21st century with TikTok and porn and Instagram and sex trafficking and all sorts of craziness that is getting crazier by the day. So I learned so much from Becky and Bridget. I don't have children, as most of you probably know, but I still got so much out of this podcast, and I think that you will too. We talked about how to talk to your kids about sex, how they handled things with their own children, with Instagram, TikTok, things like that. We talked about how we can be the example for the youth of today in our own actions and being ourselves. We just really shed light on a lot of the darkness. I'm really excited to share this episode. I would highly recommend you go check out their podcast as well. Like I said, they're doing really important work. And I did an episode with them too, which was really fun. We recorded it right before this one, so definitely go check that out. My episode with them was like all about shedding light on the darkness and being yourself. So it really ties in with this as well. So check it out if you have the time. And otherwise, I just want to thank Becky and Bridget so much for taking the time to sit down with me. This was my first time doing a podcast on Zoom and my first time doing a podcast with two people. So it is a little bit of a longer episode, but like I said, they have a lot of really awesome stories that I think will hit home for you. And I'm really excited to share it with you. So thank you so much for taking the time. And let's grab a candle, some sage, palo santo, sweetgrass, sacred smoke, whatever you've got laying around, and let's lighten up together. What's up, fam? It's Calla from Recalibrate, here with my friends Bridget and Becky from the Save Our Children podcast. Before we get started too much into the podcast, I wondered if we could just take a minute and really ground into this present moment together. And we're all connecting via this technology interweb right now. So let's just take a moment to get back into our bodies, and let's do that with 3 deep breaths together. Let's take the deepest breaths that we've taken all day. So we'll breathe in through our nose or through your mouth, whatever is good for you. Let's just go in 1, 2, 3. And let it out. And again, breathe in. Last one. If you have a candle nearby, let's grab it, grab a lighter, and just anchor some light into this planet by lighting our candle, calling upon God, our highest self, all of the ascended masters, the beings of light, our ancestors, and just all of the spirits that are here to help us. I ask that you help us all communicate clearly and accurately and concisely in this transmission and communicate from our hearts to shed light on this topic that can be so dark at times, but really just allow us to feel the connection to each other and to the love that is running throughout this planet, and focus on bringing more of that love and light to each and every person on this planet who is suffering or struggling. Whew. And so it is. Thank you guys so much for being here.
Thanks for having us.
So let's do, collectively, you are the Save Our Children podcast, but I want to treat you both as separate individuals as well. So, Becky, do you want to start us off and maybe introduce yourself and the podcast?
Absolutely. So I'm Becky Shonchek. I have 2 boys, 13 and 11. I've been married for 16 years. And really my journey actually starts as a health journey. So about 4 years ago, I was diagnosed with autoimmune thyroid, and I knew right away that it was, nope, we're not going to just go to the doctor. Like, we're not just going to have no answer as to what really the problem is. And I'm not going to play the game of, oh, well, these are the symptoms, cover them up and figure it out. And so I ended up finding myself at a functional medicine doctor, where they literally said, Becky, you need to eat all the things you've never eaten in your whole life. So at 38 years old, when I would say, people would say, oh, do you like broccoli? And I'd be like, no, I don't really like broccoli. I had never tried broccoli. And so I got to a whole life. I grew up within a very convenience family. My dad was a pharmacist. My mom worked full time. When McDonald's was around, we went to McDonald's. My dad worked nights. We would go to the mall and eat at the food court. Like, it was just what we did. And so I grew up that way. I raised my boys that way. And I found out that everything I was doing was wrong. And so I was always under the illusion of, if you're thin, you're healthy. That's not the truth. And so I ended up being able, in my process to fix my body, I realized that there is electromagnetic frequencies that we are getting bombarded with, and that there's genetically modified food that we have, and that we, all of the jabs, I don't want this to get taken off later, all of the jabs that we've ever gotten probably contributed to my autoimmune issues, probably contributed to my boys' attention deficit issues, probably contributed to my older son's tics. And so as a mom, it was, okay, what can we do to start fixing ourselves, our family, eating right, making sure we're buying clean foods, making sure we're doing these things, looking at heavy metal sprays, and how do we get rid of heavy metals in our body, and how do we do all those things? Well, in the midst of all of this, we get into our cocoa world. And my husband's cousin says to me, have you ever watched Fall of Cabal? And I was like, no, I don't even know what the hell you're talking about. So I go and I watch it, and it's one of those like mind-blowing things. Like, what do you mean this is happening? And even if it's like 50% of it's only happening, what the hell do you mean 50% of it is only happening? Like, yeah, what is going on? And so I immediately was like digging. And then I found myself getting really, really depressed, because it was just, you just have this like sense of evil over you. And last fall, like I grew up, this is kind of jumping everywhere, so I apologize. I grew up Catholic, kind of lost that when I got to a point. And then when I started digging into the evils of human trafficking, I found that the only way to balance the evil is with the good. And so we ended up going back to church. This past spring, my boys and I got rebaptized in the church because of it. Because it really was, I can't follow this rabbit hole and all of this evil without making sure I'm tethered into some light. And ever since then, like, I don't have any anxiety issues. Between my diet and coming back to who I am and who I'm intended to be, I don't have to take any medicine for it. I don't even, most of the time, occasionally I'll like have a panic attack or an anxiety attack, but who the hell doesn't anymore? But like going from taking medicine for 15 years to not having to take anything to, I've been able to help myself. My boys, my older son does have attention deficit that runs in the family, but we took out all the food coloring. And instead of him increasing in his medicine as he gets older, he's actually decreasing in his medicine as he gets older. So between vitamins and different things that we're doing, we found that helps. But that's what started my whole process into every rabbit hole you could imagine. Like if there is one, I've probably heard of it. And if you think someone will say, could that be? And I was like, probably. Like nothing would surprise me anymore for as many things as I've gone down. But I started following a survivor, and Bridget was also following this survivor on Instagram. And we had a mutual friend. Well, not mutual friend. He knew Bridget and our friend Emma, and he reached out to me because I was starting to do some rallies in the Phoenix area. And he's like, hey, you're in the Phoenix area. She's in the Phoenix area. You guys should get together and do this. And so I ended up kind of joining their group, meeting all of the people. And then Bridget and I started talking, and this was in January. And literally she's like, hey, I'm going to Sedona. I'd love for you to join me. And I'm thinking, no, I would love to go because she seems like the sweetest person ever, but I might die. And so here's where my position is. I'm putting on my phone stuff and I might be dead. Like, thanks. Love you, husband. Love you, kids. Bridget's going to kill me in the woods of Sedona. But it was literally the best trip. Her daughter was with us. And ever since then, we found out we live literally 20 minutes down the road from each other and never knew each other before then. But Bridget, I'll let you kind of give your background, and then you can tell us kind of how we went from to get our podcast.
Okay. Yeah. So I'm Bridget, and I have a daughter. She just turned 12. So as far as how I got involved in all of this was I've always been into holistic meds and just holistic healing. And so then just as life happens, just my own experience of having my daughter at home in my restroom by myself and just my whole childbirth. And then, oh yeah, that will
oh girl.
That's for a whole nother podcast.
I know, dude.
Yeah, so she was back in my ribcage. Basically, I had her on my normal cycle date. And my parents, I lived with my parents this time, and I had her in the bathroom all by myself, and that's a whole nother story. But yeah, just between that and different life experiences of dating and different relationships I've been in. And then the last relationship I was in, I started to like get anxiety, and this is actually at the time I went deeper into the trafficking rabbit hole and before the pandemic. And so just the timing of it all, and then like that whole situationship I was in and put myself in, I started getting anxiety. And I'm not one to take meds, but I did like take a couple, like I think I only took 2 of his anxiety pills, and because he had anxiety. And then it just got to a point where I just like came to realization with myself, like, why am I putting myself in this position? Like, I literally am having sex with the devil, like, just because like I felt his energy, and it was just very dark. And I've never really suffered from anxiety before, and I don't take meds. And so I was just like, I can't do this. Like, but then it got to the point of course, people will make you feel bad and like, oh, why are you doing this to me? And so then me being the nice person trying to always heal and help people, I like get myself into a point where now it's affecting me and my energy. So I pulled myself out, and I was like, nope, this is another one of God's tests. Like, I'm not falling for this again. I got out. And so then the timing of it was also before even like sex trafficking started coming out more. And before the whole pandemic, I just was connected with a friend, Sean and Emma, and we're like, something is going to happen. Something big's going to happen. I was telling family and friends, I was like, I don't know when, but the world's going to shut down. Like, something's going to happen. And they're like, yeah, okay, you're crazy, whatever. I'm like, no, really. And they're like, yeah, okay, whatever. Conspiracy theorist. And I'm like, okay, whatever. When it happens, like, I'm gonna be like, I told you so. So, I got myself out of that relationship. And then it was at the time too, when I first watched Frazzle Drip. and the whole trafficking rabbit holes and deeper into trafficking rabbit hole, which I always knew it was bad, but I didn't know it was this bad. So then I had like a nightmare of literally Hollywood and children and frazzled of like the kids like screaming and just crying. And I could just see like flashing bright lights. And I just saw flashing and crying and saw kids' faces, like how they would do like a Hollywood lineup of like all the different images. And then it just like, I saw like one screen where if you were on Zoom with like, I don't know, 1,000 people, and it zoomed out and had like all the faces and everyone just crying. And like, so it woke me up in the middle of the night and I couldn't sleep for like a week straight after seeing that. And so then me and my friend Emma, we kept praying. We're like, we have to do something. We have to get involved even more and get louder. So then as censorship started happening on social media and then the pandemic happened, she got her page taken down. And we started connecting with different survivors and following different survivors and people all over. And then we connected with Becky, and then all of us all connected. And then she started a podcast. First, it was just about the truth telling part of it. And then she then was like, I want to do a survivor series and let them know that we hear them, we see them, and we stand by them. And so she started sharing their stories as our pages and their pages started getting shut down and censorship started getting bad. We're like, okay, let's turn our pages over to the survivors. I don't care if you need my password. Here's my password. Take over my page. Share your story. So that's how that started. Is we were like, we just want to be advocates and share their stories. They deserve to be heard. They've been silenced for too long. And people want the truth. Here's the truth coming straight from the survivor. So then she started the Survivor series. And Becky, how many episodes is she even on now?
So she wanted to do 5. She's like, I'll just do 5. Like, that'll be fine. And I think last I put into our website, it's something close to 20.
Yeah. And she still has more.
All survivors. Yeah. And different types of survivors. So it's people who had satanic ritual abuse, people who were part of like pedophilia in their family, people who were trafficked, people whose kids have been taken from them. So maybe not survivors themselves, but they're dealing with it as a parent. So
what's the name of her? It's a podcast she has. What's that called?
Her podcast is called The Imagination. And we actually started a organization called Stand By Survivors. And so we have a website, standbysurvivors.com, and then the 2 podcasts that branch off.
Okay. So then Save Our Children is the one branch, and then, okay.
Imagination is the other. Yep.
Yeah. So she started that podcast and it really bloomed into something beautiful and continues to grow. And she has such a big following now. So we all supported her and worked together on that project and just really amplifying their voices. So then from there, Becky and I were like, as we got feedback and heard different people and saw on different podcasts, as we saw more people starting to podcast, we're like, there's no parent podcast. Or people are like, okay, you're shedding the light on the darkness, but now what do I do with this information? How do I get involved? So for us, we're like, hey, well, we're parents and we are involved in our communities. And Becky was leading the marches for trafficking here. So we're like, let's bring it all together and we'll just start a podcast. We don't know what the hell we're doing, but we'll jump into it and do it. So we pretty much prayed on it, and it was just the timing, because we had it in the back of our mind, but we're like, okay, but when's the right time? And people kept getting brought to us, but we didn't, again, know what to do, how to podcast, nothing. So then Emma, our friend Emma, was like, I can help you guys. So we jumped on a call. She showed us how to do it. And then we're like, okay, we'll just let it flow. Whatever happens, happens. And so Becky and I started a podcast, Save Our Children podcast, we always say everyone's a survivor of something. And so everyone has a story to tell, and who you are then isn't the same person you are today. So those barriers and all the afflictions you've had in your life has made you stronger in who you are today. So we welcome everybody, and we're like, we know how it felt being silenced, and we have small pages, and one of my pages is private and I got account warnings. So I'm just like, this is dumb. Let's use our podcast, because then we can't be censored. We can put it out everywhere. So we started our podcast, and then now it's just organically grown. And then we meet people in the community and we ask God, like, how do you want us to show up, and how can we be a part of this, and what path do you want us on? So we just let it all come to us, and whatever podcast or person pop up, that's how we organically do it.
Yes. I don't think you had started your podcast when I had met you, or did you already have it? No.
Yeah, we started at the middle of April, and this week is episode 20.
Oh, wow. Cool.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Bridget and I met at the Unsheltered event, volunteering with Kyrie. And I knew immediately, like, I don't even know how we got on the topic of truth and trafficking and all of that. But I was like, damn, this bitch is powerful. Like,
I can tell you how, because Bridget walks into a room and people find her. Like, I've been with her, and all of a sudden we'll be sitting there, and then someone will be talking about like trafficking over here, and she'll be like, wait, what do you want to talk about? And we will be in places that nobody would know, but magically they show up when Bridget walks in the door. And it is definitely like, people come to us. She's not joking when she says it.
We were at a local coffee shop, and we were meeting someone that somebody else, a family friend, connected us to. And I didn't put two and two together. I looked up the person I was meeting, and I was like, okay, they know my family, like whatever. So we all meet them. So I brought Becky, so I wasn't by myself. And I looked at their website, everything, didn't put it together until I saw her shirt, and like we got to talking, and I was like, oh my God, that's that vaccine whistleblower. That's her best friend, who just like, she passed away, and whatever cause they said is not true. She got suicided, whatever. Wow. So we're sitting there, and I was just like, she went to the bathroom, and I was like, holy shit, we're at like coffee with her best friend. And so and then like we're all having a conversation, and one, like, all of a sudden you just see me like zone out, and Becky looks at me. She's like, are you okay?
Like, what are you paying attention to? Like, we're talking, come on.
And I'm like listening to them, but I'm like, my body language, it was like this. And so I'm like, I heard trafficking, and I heard like this, these three ladies to the right of us talking. And I'm like, I think somebody's being trafficked and needs help at this table. And so they were talking about like everything going on in the world, and the government, and the pandemic, and all of that. And so they were just like finding out about all of it. And then this little cute granny, she's like, this one lady, this one girl, she calls, and she would always call the granny for help. And so I'm like, excuse me. And I look at them, and I'm like, I don't want to be rude, but I think they're talking about trafficking, and someone needs help. They're like, just ask them. I interrupt people's conversations all the time. So I'm
from the Midwest is for, that's what you do. You just get in there in conversation.
I do the same.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. So I was like, sorry, I don't mean to be rude, but I think you guys are talking about sex trafficking, and we're talking about the same stuff as you guys. And then we all get to talking, and they're like, well, yeah, we are. And so we all joined, like we opened up our chairs, and now we join in the middle of this coffee shop. So people are walking around probably like, what the hell are all these girls talking about? And we have like all different ages and like the different generations. So it was a great conversation. So then, long story short, this one girl who kept calling the granny, it sounded like she was being trafficked. And she's like, well, why does she call me? I'm like, because she's like, all I can do is pray for her. I can't help her get her out. And I'm like, that's okay. That's all she needs at this time. Like, she feels your energy and your spirit, and praying is helping get her through this moment. And we just had a great conversation. Next thing you know, we ended up there for like 2 hours or something. And then at the end, Becky's like, how the hell did you meet this person? What just happened? And we're like, I don't know I didn't expect that to happen, but just little things like that. Or I'll always message her and Emma and be like, you'll never guess who I just met at the grocery store and this and that. And so they're like, what the heck? You always are meeting somebody.
Always.
That's so beautiful. It's spirit, man. And it's a web, you know?
Mm-hmm.
But I knew immediately, I was like, this woman is powerful and she knows her shit. And I was like, we're going to work together, like somehow, some way. So I'm really grateful that we're here doing this now. It's like big, you know?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Same with you as well. I love everything that you're doing.
Thank you. So I was wondering, so actually, I'm going to back up. When I was talking to a friend, she was like, oh, what's your next podcast? I was like, oh, I'm going to have, my friend come on and we're going to talk about sex trafficking. And she was like, whoa, well, that's not very light. And, I think that there is like this misconception that if we are talking about the darkness or talking about these dark topics that we're feeding them. And I just was wondering if one or both of you could speak on like the balance of talking about the darkness or why you feel compelled to talk about this topic, or even just like why this is your passion. All of those questions I want to hear.
Yeah.
So
they kind of all have kind of the same answer. I realized in a quick hurry that it could be my own children. And it was, okay, so what am I going to do about it? How are we going to fix it? And I don't think we can fix it, but the idea of talking about it is making people aware and making sure it is a dark topic. But if we can have this podcast and we can alert a mom to sit and have a conversation with her daughter or her son, and we can say, they need to be aware of these things, that this could happen, that this evil's in the world, and not to scare them. The idea is not to be scaring kids like, oh my God, they're going to get pulled into a white van and they're going to be taken away. No, that does happen, but that's not really the issue. For us, the bigger issue is social media and being on the computer and technology. And are we being parents we need our kids to be? And so, for example, just my boy started school a couple weeks ago, and before school started, Bridget and I were at a conference, and one of the speakers said that the average age for kids to start looking at porn is 8.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And okay, first of all, when I was 8, I didn't know shit about shit. So we can talk about that. But the average age is 8. And men now between the age, I can't even say they're men because they're kids, but between the ages of 18 and 25 have erectile dysfunction because they look at so much porn. Either they've used it too much or they can't actually be with a real woman because it's so fake in their head and their chemistry has changed. Their body no longer works. So these are the things that we're going up against. This is the evil we are fighting, because how many people are like, oh, porn's harmless. Oh, porn is no big deal. And this same guy who was giving the speech was like, we know that sex and your sexual nature is part of who we are. That just is, that's how we reproduce. That's how we stay a people, is by doing that. And this idea that you are on, he gave a great analogy. He's like, you're on these train tracks that are sexuality. Mm-hmm. And if your sexuality is with your partner, whatever, he goes, stop number 3 is looking at softcore porn. You're just doing whatever. You don't really have anything. And maybe that's as far as you go. And that's it. And that's cool. He goes, but for many people now that doesn't do enough for you anymore. So now you're going to keep going down your track. And now you get off at stop 10, and stop 10 is a little bit harder and it's a little bit crazy or whatever. And then you go down the train tracks and now none of that's working anymore. So now you're going to try and open something where they're maybe raping a child. And that kind of gets you off. So now you go from being someone who is using their sexuality the way that it should be used, all the way down to stop 58, where you are now the one raping the child. Mm-hmm. And everybody's like, no, that's not how it works. No. Sexuality is the same train track. all the way down. It's what gets you off on all of those stops, and how far are you willing to go. Porn is the stop, the thing that gets you in. And they found studies that are your brain chemistry changes and your body changes and different things. So as much as people have talked about it, and again, you do you, but for my children, I don't want that to be something that's an adult thing. At least we don't need to have it at a kid level. So a couple days before school, I say, and we were just finished with this conference, I go up to my boys. Again, they're 11 and 13, and my older son's in 8th grade. So I was like, all right, we're going to have a conversation about this. And so I say, do you guys know what porn is? And they're like, no, I have no idea. And again, you say your words and the things you do that are age appropriate. I don't need to pull it up. We don't need to be showing you, but they do. So first of all, I'll back up. I am totally that mom. My degree is in biology. So a penis is a penis, a vagina is a vagina. It is what it is. Here's how it's used, blah, blah, blah. Now, we don't need to be going into how to make a girl. No, we don't need to do that, but they need to know this is how a baby's made, and you make it age appropriate. So I said to them, I said, well, it's people who are having sex on camera and it's on the internet. And my son's like, why would you do that? Well, it's pretty lucrative if you're going to go into the real reason, but I don't know. But it just so happened that on the very first day of 8th grade, they were in a icebreaker, and some kid comes up to him and says, hey, do you watch porn? Mm-hmm. And he's like, no. And we actually did a podcast last week with him. I did a podcast last week with him, and I said, but what would have happened if I didn't tell you what porn was already?
You did a podcast with your son?
Yeah.
I love that. I've been wanting to do one with a kid or my parents. So I really love that.
So and that's part of it is he came to me and was like, I really want to be on your podcast. And I was like, what do you want to talk about? I don't know. I'm like, well, you're going to have a topic because we can't just stare at each other. And so that was what happened, was the first few weeks of school. So we did that. And I said, if you didn't know, if I didn't already tell you what that was, you would have been curious enough to go in your room on your phone, do whatever, and look it up. And that could have been and that doesn't mean he never will. I'm not dumb enough to think, oh, my kid's just a saint, he's never going to do it. But I don't want your people at school to be the ones that teach you about these things. It's my responsibility to teach you about them and to make you ready for them. And so that's where the podcast, all of this stuff kind of comes back around. It's our responsibility as parents. And yeah, this world is scary as hell. Like, there's so much bad shit out there, but there's also so much good stuff. And are we teaching them to help their neighbors, to pray for one another? We go to church. Like, are you teaching them to be good people? Because that's what the world needs.
Yeah. And that really feeds also the question too, because by you bringing, it's like this inherent notion that we have in our society that by talking about something or bringing up, we're going to make it happen. Like, if we talk about death, we're going to die. If we talk about porn, our kids going to watch porn. If we talk about the darkness, it's feeding the darkness. But really, it was the opposite of that. Like, you shed light on this dark topic, however you want to look at it, it is a little dark. And you were the light for your son in that scenario. And if anything, it prevented the darkness from grasping him because he had the light of his mother. Like, and it is hard for you, and I'm sure probably awkward, to go up to your son and ask him if he knows what porn is. Like,
yeah, totally not awkward. I'm one of those moms who it's embarrassing for him, totally not embarrassing for me, and it embarrasses the hell out of my husband. But I'm like, eventually it probably is going to get a little weird, and then I'm going to have to retire. But right now it's like, well, no, that's my job. My job is to make sure you know what you know. And so Bridget and I are super open with our kids, and probably more than we probably should be in some areas, but that makes them very open and honest and can pick things out. Because Bridget's daughter is super smart when it comes to being awakened to all of the stuff.
Yeah, you were saying your daughter can see through a lot of the Coco narrative too.
That, and like she can pick apart like the subliminal messages and everything, like the symbolism, especially like on Disney or the different shows. And she'll pause shows and she'll say, oh my gosh, mom, look. And there was one show, I don't even remember what it was, but there was a little boy on the Disney Channel who was bringing a baby out of a sewer. And she's like, well, that would be like them bringing kids out of the tunnels. And then there was a mom over there who was pregnant and she was gnawing on the cheese. And officer was like, something about her living in the sewer. And she's like, basically talks about how she lives in the sewer and breeds kids, babies. Mm-hmm. And so my daughter's like, that's trafficking. Like, and so she can pick apart that stuff. But we're both super open and with our children, and they're often on our podcast, and we have conversations and open dialogue with them, just because for us, we wanted to have a place for, as we say, everyone is a survivor of something. So we wanted to show the authenticity of like how we parent and how we have the conversations in real time with our kids, and really just show like us showing up as a parent and being authentic, and we can't ask you to do something if we're not doing it. So we try to show that on our podcast as well, just to give parents another way of how to have these conversations, and not like, you have to make the kid comfortable and you have to have age appropriate conversations, because if they're not comfortable and you don't have a soft place to land, they shut down and they don't feel comfortable of having these conversations. So we really then.
Why do I have a glitch?
Can you hear me?
I can hear you.
Okay. Yeah, I can hear you.
There you go. Okay.
Okay. So we also wanted to give a side of, like the parents portion, like not just the parents, but the survivor side of it, and say that way they could show like, I wish my parents had this conversation with me, or as a child, I wish my parents would have given me more love and affection or attention. And this day and age, a lot of the kids turn to social media, and the mental health aspects of that has ruined so many childhood, just childhood in general. They don't play outside anymore. And us living in Arizona, and then like the whole pandemic, at one point we were #1 in sex trafficking. So kids were getting taken from Costco, your Arizona Mills, Chandler Mall. They were getting taken all over. So we really wanted to show like, this is happening in your backyard. It's time to wake up. It's time to talk about it, shed light on it, and hold other people accountable, because it's important to talk about. There's no way we can heal from it if we don't talk about it. But then also, don't wait until it's at your front door, and don't wait until it's your child or someone you know to actually start to care and give a fuck about it, because it could be you, it could be your kid, or someone you know. And so for us, it was just about the children in general. And once we learned everything deeper into what we knew, there's no being silent, because for us, it was like, then we're part of the problem if we're not speaking out on it. So we're like, we need to get involved in more than one way.
Wow. That's so beautiful. I am just blown away by the way that you guys are embodying it and just showing up and putting this out there for people. And it is really important with the social media and TikTok and all of these things. Like, I myself am not a parent yet, but I can empathize of how, you know, I know things were scary when I was on AOL chat rooms back in
right
96, and like shit has progressed. Like, I was probably more like the year 2000, but anyway, shit has progressed regardless. Yeah. So I just wondered if you could talk a little bit about, like, you know, when you started having these conversations with these kids and how that has looked, or just like any other advice you have for parents who are dealing with this, which is everyone.
Everybody's dealing with it.
I would say at a very young age, mm-hmm. like, I would say the younger you have these conversations, parenting actually is easier, because just the prevention and just them being aware, watching their surroundings, knowing, especially when it comes to like even family or friends, and no one touching your private areas. And at the doctor, like when they do the checkups, like they're not allowed to check you unless you have a parent or someone who that is trusted from your mom or your dad, or foster, like however that situation, whoever your legal guardian is, that they're not allowed to touch you in those areas unless you have that person with you. And just having those conversations at a young age, I think it's made parenting easier for me, especially I know when it came to my daughter getting older and the social media, and I'm not one to give social media, and I won't let her have it. And it's not that I want to put fear in parents. And on our podcast, we often talk about if your kids do have social media or being influenced by TikTok, or the different YouTube influencers are huge right now on TikTok. So we often talk about the layers of protection and how parents need to learn to educate with this day and age when it comes to the technology, what lingo they're using, what those emojis mean in their world, because they don't use verbal communication like when we grew up. They use bemojis and emojis. So what you might think gas means doesn't really mean gas in their world. And so we educate parents on different platforms and different things you can use to learn this information, so you can have not only the knowledge, but then also have a safe place to land for your children so they can relate. And like, I know for me, when my daughter went behind my back and created social media, then we watched this film where a mom goes undercover as a 10-year-old. It was like 10 or 11-year-old. She goes undercover, and it shows how quick the predators will start DMing them and what happens. And so then we go into how it could lead to sex trafficking. Or it's not that I want to be the mean or bad parent. It's just like, at your age, we were outside, we were playing, we were being a child, and there's just so much online bullying and so much more that they have to worry about. So I think for me, I would say definitely just talking to your children is huge, because if you don't do it, you don't want somebody else or Siri or Google creating a different illusion in their head. And you can find anything online. All they have to do is ask Siri.
Yeah. Yeah. I think I started talking to my older son when he was 4 or 5. I didn't know about trafficking and all that stuff back in the day, but that was more about his body. So I legit am that mom who would find an image on the internet, and not more like a diagram, I should say, not in actual, I'm not showing them real images, but talking about this is what happens, and this is what's going to happen when you go through puberty. And these are the things that are going to be there. And you can tell as a parent when they're like, and I'm checked out. And you're like, okay, I've hit their level of knowledge and we don't need to go any further. Or they'll ask a question, and like my older son, when he was little, he's like he's trying to piece all of the things that I say about puberty to like come together. And I was like, well, sometimes when your penis is hard, like stuff like that. And then he's like, so do you pee? And then you're like, ooh, where do I go with this? Cause it's like, and so that's where some of the difficult things come in, but it's like, I'm just going to be honest. And my older son had the best response once. My cousin's son was just born. It was 5 years ago, and he was just born, and they're like, oh, we got him circumcised and whatever. I was telling my husband that happened, and my older son's like, well, what is that? And so I'm like, I'll tell you what it is. So I'm literally just trying to look up I have my phone and he's sitting next to me. I'm just trying to look up like a drawn out image. Well, don't ever look up circumcision on the internet, because that's not what comes up. So there's grown men, all this stuff. And I'm explaining to him, like, there's a top that used to be there and it got taken off, whatever. And he's looking at these grown men and he's looking at himself and he goes, did you cut it off? Like, cause he's seeing that he's so much smaller. And I was like, no, you just are not big yet. Like, hold on. It was the best conversation, but that's how it works. But we tell parents all the time, and we're actually working, we're in the process of trying to create some, documents or different things to send out that are age appropriate? What do you talk to your kids about with sex? Well, number one, you absolutely have to use the right words, because if something happens to them and they're in court, God forbid they're in court, and they say, did that person touch your penis? And you don't call it a penis, and they say no, you could have lost what you're needing, what your case is. And so start calling things by what they are. Now, that does not mean you always have to call it that. You can say wiener or whatever, but they need to know that this word is this word, and that's what it is. Then you have to go into, there are absolutely no secrets. Surprises are one thing. So if you want to say, hey, we have a surprise for daddy, whatever. But if I always use Uncle Todd. I don't even have an Uncle Todd, but I always use Uncle Todd, where I say, if Uncle Todd is telling you, don't tell mom, it's just our fun little secret, that's a problem. You should never have secrets between you and somebody else. And if somebody tries to tell you a secret, you need to tell me. And that could even be dad, or that could be mom to dad, or that could be grandma. Like, there's all sorts of familial things that go on in that situation. And then it has to do with, nobody is allowed to touch your private parts. And a friend of mine messaged me, her boys are 5 and 4, and her son, bless his heart, got the message that nobody was supposed to touch his privates. And so he says to his mom, but can I touch my privates? Like, and she kind of freaked out. She's like, oh my God. And I was like, no. He's just 5 and he's a boy. And if they could play with it till it fell off, they probably would. So, but take into account that he heard you, that nobody's allowed to touch it, that he felt, and then he felt comfortable enough to ask you if this was okay. And so really, like Bridget said, you have to be that soft place to land. Now, that does not ever mean your kids never get in trouble. That does not ever mean that you will never yell at them. But that does mean that if you yell at them and you find out the story, you come back in and you apologize if you were wrong, or you talk it through with them or whatever, because you don't ever want to get to a situation where they can't come talk to you. There was a girl in my college. I was not there, but after I had left, her parents were super, super strict religious, and she got pregnant. She didn't tell them. She ended up in the bathroom having her baby. She ended up dying from bleeding too much, and the baby died because it fell in the toilet. All because she couldn't tell her parents what happened. And I never want my boys to be in a situation where, you know what, that doesn't mean I won't yell at you. That doesn't mean that I will not be angry, but you know that I will help you figure it out. And I know Bridget parents that way too with her daughter, with, you know what, that doesn't mean you get away with everything, but we're going to figure it out.
Yeah, for me, it's always, you're better off telling me the truth than lying to me, because otherwise you're going to get in more trouble. So, and then even for me, like, I won't ever lie to my kid. Like, I'm going to have that conversation. And it wasn't funny because it happened, but the whole pandemic, we had gone to Disney and we came back and we all weren't feeling good. And she has asthma. So we ended up at like urgent care. And she had to get a steroid because she has allergy-induced asthma. And so when she gets bad and out of control, like, they have to give her a steroid. So I said something like, she had gotten sent home from school because she threw up out of nowhere. And so I was like, well, this is weird. And so this was before we found out cocoa even exists and like was a thing. So I was like, oh, like, that's why I said people can get it. She's like, well, how do you get this? And I was like, well, you can get it from cooties. I said, this is why you stay away from boys. Like, they have cooties, had viruses. And so we were joking, and she, I don't even know what came up, but somehow the conversation of like, she didn't get mono, but we were talking about like different, the doctor came in and said, well, these are the different things, like strep, like different things. And so she's like, well, what is mono? And I pulled up a picture and I was like, I showed her, and she's like, well, that's gross. And then I was like, yeah, that's why you don't kiss boys or this and that. Like, they have cooties. That's why you need to stay away from them. And then all of a sudden, like, cocoa then happened. And I was like, oh, now the world's calling it cooties. Like, well, this kind of helped my parenting. So it kind of worked out, because I was like, well, then I technically didn't lie to her, because now the world has an outbreak of cooties and they're keeping you apart. So So that part kind of worked out, but it was a white lie. That was like one white lie. But for me, it's always about transparency and like always tell the truth, because you're going to get in more trouble lying to me.
Oh yeah. I've said that to so many boyfriends.
Mhm.
I'm like,
So many clients.
yeah. So yeah, that's, I mean, so how do you keep that balance between, you know, not yelling at your kid too much? Like even Bridget, when you found out your kid had a social media, like you said you watched that, or you know, you watched that video about the parent, but like, God, that would piss me off.
Oh, it was. And she wouldn't give me the passwords to get into the account. But for me, it was more so she was like scared she was going to get in trouble. And so for me, it was like I was more mad at that point that she lied, especially after I knew the truth and told her I knew the truth and who told me, and I had screenshots and everything. But for me, it was like, okay, I'm going to give you the benefit of the doubt. I'm going to let you explain yourself. You tell your side. Then I'm going to tell you what I know and how I know you're lying. And then you're going to give me the passwords. If you can't do that, then I'm taking the iPod away and the tablet. And so no matter what little security you have on your phone, she would watch me. And that's the thing. Our kids are always watching and listening. So I would type in my code with her. I would share it with her and be like, oh yeah, get them in my phone. Like I have nothing to hide here. You need my phone. Sure. Use it. Or she like will look up something on Target or whatever. And so she would watch me put in my passcode, and she knew. And then, so she knew how to bypass it, where she created the whole email and all that account. So for me, it was more so I was upset with Instagram because they wouldn't allow me as the parent. And she was a minor at this age. At this point, she was like 8 or 9. And they would not give me access to the account. They wouldn't shut down the account. So for me, it was more so I was upset with Instagram that it was such a fight to get that protection. With her, it was like, okay, we're all been kids once, done something our parents told us not to do. But then for me, it was more so now I'm going to not react. Like it's hard not to like react like, oh, I want to like yell at you, this and that, and discipline you. But for me, it was like, I try not to have those conversations. Like when I'm upset, I'll walk away, kind of let it like process it, and then we'll go back and have a conversation about it, just so then I don't project onto her. Because for me, when I was growing up, I would always ask my mom why, or I would always answer, but in my mind it was I wasn't answering. I'm asking, or I'm not answering. I'm just trying to explain myself. So now that she's gotten older, and then she sees that, like, I'm always like, well, use your voice. Like, don't let anyone ever silence you, this and that. Now her thing is, I'm not talking back. I'm explaining myself. So my mom laughs because she's like, this is
I would be laughing too.
with you. My mom's like, this is what I had to deal with you. So now like, here you go. Now you get it with your kid. It's a mini you. So It's hard, but just remembering like kind of to step back for a moment, process it, but then always know that there's a difference of, yeah, you're not answering, but there's a difference of disrespect. And like, that's one thing I will always explain, like, okay, this is disrespectful, or this is where like you should have done this, or we'll have a conversation about it versus just like yell at her. Cause then she just shuts down and doesn't want to talk, and then like has an attitude. And I'd rather not deal with all that. So I'm just like, well, no. So usually when that stuff like that happens, it's like, okay, I see as a parent, you need to get a break from social media, go back outside, connect with nature. For me, luckily she's not on it much, on her iPod, but it's usually, she's still a kid. So for me, it's like, it's weird to see like different kids, where my kid is still 12 and she'll play with dolls and wants her own little space, where you see other 12-year-olds on social media and like they're talking about different things on Snapchat, or like the fact that kids can get heroin at the age of 10 now, and they're meeting people they're getting it from the high schoolers and meeting strangers at parks, and they literally have access to heroin at 10. So when I hear conversations or hear like different talking to like my daughter, and she shares with me, like, with the whole TikTok trend, how people are confused on like being bi, or it's a trend to be bi because of TikTok, and how that's really influencing the campuses, or to be transgender. And so we have those different conversations of where then people will like try to like talk to her, confuse her, and then she's like, well, you know, I kind of don't feel that way, or so just different scenarios. Or like one of her friends who live in our area, she was talking to a stranger in Florida through social media, through the gaming. And so then she was dating someone in Florida. Then the parents found out that they were way older than her, like I want to say 4 or 5 years older than her. And they FaceTime everything. And then it moved to, they broke up, and then they were talking to someone 15 minutes away from our house that they didn't know. So just like having a soft place for our kids to land, again, then is easier to discipline. She doesn't really get in trouble much unless it's like an attitude, or like I can tell what certain group of friends she's hanging out with, because then her attitude changes.
Yeah. Dude,
for me, it was like literally working on myself first. Like I had to, like, I've been in therapy for 3 years. Like I had to clear out a lot of my hurt and a lot of the way that like I was parented, because I assumed that that was the way that you parent. And so I parented my kids all the way till my son was 10 in the way that I was parented. And I saw how bad that was. I saw how negative it was, how yelly I was all the time. And a lot of it had nothing to do with them. It was the world and everything else. And they were the trigger that was enough to set me off. And so for me, it was, I've got to fix me. And once I fix me, then I can respond to them differently. Now, that doesn't mean it doesn't piss me off when they lie, because that is like the one thing that sends me through the roof. It doesn't, that they never get in trouble or any of that stuff, but I can see how my response to them is different. But then I can also see, to Bridget's point, she was talking about YouTube and all of those things. And I let my boys watch YouTube. That's another thing we say in our podcast is the world is still going to exist. So we've got to train our kids, teach our kids how to live in the world. We can't keep them in a bubble. And then when they turn 18, we hope that they're good enough. No. They'll be crazy. Like, and no disrespect to Amish people at all. They'll be like crazy, like Amish people who see nothing. And then they go out and they do their stuff and they're all doing everything crazy. Yeah. It's this evil exists. You need to know how to handle it. And so I can tell the exact same thing when my boys are watching YouTube too much, and all of a sudden the things that they have, they're ungrateful for. Or you're like, why do you think that you get to have a $10,000 vacation when the $2,000 vacation that most kids don't get to go on was not good enough for you, and stuff like that. So then it's like, oh, you've been watching too much YouTube. Because my boys are on a YouTube ban right now. They don't get to watch it all week. They didn't get to watch it because my younger son got scared of whatever he saw. And I was like, all right, then we're done. And that's kind of what I think our job as parents is to recognize when outside influences are impacting our kids. Okay, well, it's this. Oh, well, you don't get to do that. Oh, it's these kids at school. Then you need to go find new friends. Oh, it's this particular thing here. Let me help you. Let me work through whatever it is.
Too, and going off of that is like another thing that I've done with my daughter at a young age is one time she told me when she was younger, she wanted a new family, and I play both roles. So I kind of have to be stricter, and so playing both roles. And one time she told me she wanted a new family. And so I was like, okay, literally grab your shoes. Like, let's go find you a new family. So I took her to the police station, and so I think I spanked her once when she was little, and it wasn't even hard. It was like literally a pat. And then she tried to say something like, oh, that's child abuse. And I was like, no, that's not. Like, you deserve to be disciplined. And so It was like literally took one time. And I drove to the fire department and I was like, oh, I'm not going to spank you like at home. I'm going to do it in front of the fire department at the police, and I'm going to do it in front of them. And I'm going to say, this is why, like, you deserve to be disciplined and you're not going to disrespect me. I didn't deserve that. And so then she's like, no. So then I was like, okay, well, then we'll go find you a new, then we're going to go find you a new family. So we drove down to downtown Mesa by like salt mine, where they have like on the corners. I think it was like, I want to say it might have been Dairy Queen or like a Taco Bell or something. I don't know. There's like the four corners downtown Mesa, and there's the different bus stops and like a lot of unsheltered community there. And so I said, okay, which corner would you like? I made her get out. I parked. We made her get out. I walked to the four corners and I said, which corner would you like? The family right there, the mom with the 3 kids, and where 2 of them don't have shoes and this is their house, or the one sleeping under the box over there, or the one talking to himself and he's on drugs, or do you want to go with this stranger? And so I let her pick her scenario. I said, which family would you like? She started bawling and walked back to the car and was like, I'm so sorry. And so then I did that when she was young. And then as she got older, I try to show her and teach her the importance of giving back and helping. So she'll go with me, whether it's feeding the homeless or the clothes and the unsheltered event that we go to downtown with Kyrie, and just letting her see the different things. I've also let her go to like a chalk walk and a protest before all the craziness broke out with the cops. But I let her see the different perspectives of the good and the bad, and kind of put it in her, like, let her see, like, you have a lot to be grateful for. Or when she gets in that ungrateful, I want this, and this because of her friends or social media, because even though she doesn't have it, she still sees it around her when she's with other people.
Yep.
So it's more so pretty much being thankful for what you have and knowing that you have a roof over your head, where somebody outside in 110 degrees in Arizona doesn't have AC. They're sleeping on asphalt. They don't have food. They don't have family, or whatever scenarios it looks like for them. So I try to let her see and volunteer in that perspective and teach her really to love on the unsheltered community as well, and giving.
Yeah, and I mean, all of this really goes back to, I mean, at the end of the day, there is no darkness. Like, all of these things are, like, you're showing her both sides, because it is that duality that allows you, you know, by her seeing like how hard it is for some people, she can have appreciation for her life. And even with like Becky, what you were saying about how, oh shit, what were you saying that I was just thinking of? I'm like, I'm not even high really. Oh, it was just there on the tip of my tongue, but just everything about how that's just it. Like, you guys are talking about the hard things with your kids and having these, oh, you were saying about how your kid, you can't just like raise your kid in a bubble and then when they're 18 hope that everything's fine. Like, darkness exists in the world. All of these things are happening. And if we don't shine our light on it or have these conversations about these hard things or show these things to our kids, then they just continue to exist anyway, but they have more of an impact and they're more dark and scary without this light being shined on it. So
we don't prepare them.
Yeah.
And Becky often will say too, like, at least our kids are aware and know, so then they can help protect another kid, or they know how to handle certain situations. If anything was to happen, at least they've had a conversation to now their reaction might be different, and they can, the prevention of it. And so a lot of it too is, you don't want somebody else or a stranger having and grooming them into thinking something's okay, and it might not be okay. But then you also look at different point of views of where you have that childhood trauma where you grew up and what was normal in their house, whether it was child abuse or a kid was raped or whatever, and don't tell, and secrets, there was secrets. And that trauma and that child, the generational curse was never broke. That's normal in their family. So what's normal in your house might not be normal in my house, and normal to everybody is different. So we try to give every perspective just because of the way of the world right now. And there's just so much going on that you have to be open and transparent.
Right. And you think about how, like, you know, they say often about how hard it is to change a first impression of a person, but imagine like a first impression of information, you know, like even just Becky, that porn story, I think is such a potent example because, you know, like that's his set point now. Is his set point about porn was given to him by his mother, and not that it can't ever change, but you can't ever get that first impression with a stimulus back again, or a person or anything. That is always going to taint the remainder of their experience. So if he had never heard of porn and then he searched porn and then saw all that porn, like it is, and you know, I've struggled with porn myself. So it was really, you know, comforting in a sense to hear you talk about it, because it is like that train where it starts with, you know, watching two people having sex, like a normal sex. And then next thing you know, it's like gangbangs and God knows what else, you know what I'm saying? Right. So like, and then that tailors your whole being and like how you show up sexually. And it is such an impact. So like, we have to have these hard conversations with our kids, because if not, someone else doesn't fucking do it. And like you said, Bridget, then they're going to groom your kid to think what they want your kid to think.
Yeah. Because if you think about it too, like as many young kids you see twerking and TikToking, and they're only dancing, they're following these trends, but the kids already know how to take a selfie, and you see them holding the phone. You see them on their phone.
My 2-year-old niece knows how to take a selfie. So,
So it's like, okay, so this is normal. This is okay. And just imagine, this is what they're posting now. Imagine as they get older, and then you have OnlyFans influencing them. And that leads to the porn industry and the entertainment industry, and growing up and being exposed to the entertainment industry and around the sports industry. Like I knew a lot of that at a young age, but like just seeing like the social media aspect, and I'm like, oh my gosh, like look at all these little kids by 18 and they're already twerking and doing whatever on social media. By the time they're 18, they're literally being trained to be prostitutes. And I just think of OnlyFans. I'm like, you're literally training them and grooming them now, thinking this is okay. And then by 18, they're going to want an OnlyFans and posting all the crap on OnlyFans just to make all this money because it's accepted and that's normal. And that making kids think that you have to sell your body to get a following or to get a like, and really that's what defines you. And it's like, no, that's not okay. Like you're grooming them, and the sexual exploitation at a young age it's so sickening and sad.
I'm sorry.
No, you go ahead. That's all.
And for the parents, likes, because they start them young so the parents can get the likes with their kids. So they learn, that's another part, being in this like preteen, teen ages of our kids now, is teaching them to be truly who they are meant to be. And for us, like, again, we talked about God saying, who did God make you to be? Because that's who I need you to be. That is what the world needs you to be. That's who the world needs you to show up to be. Now, if that means you're a little quirky and weird, great, cool. Be quirky and weird. High five to you. Sometimes tone it down, know your limits. Here we are. But make sure you know that, because I don't want the world influencing my son's ability to be liked. And that's the problem that we have, is that I'm going to put a picture up. Oh man, I really hope I get 100 likes. I don't give two shits if you read it or not. Go right ahead. Like it. Great. High five. You like it. You don't like it. Don't care. But that's why my boys don't have social media now either, because first of all, who are you going to like? You go to school with all these children. You'll see them at school. You don't need to see them at home. But Peyton and I had a conversation where he's like, oh yeah, kids, like you're more famous the higher likes and people you have on your Instagram or on TikTok or whatever. And it's like, but you don't know anybody about that, or you don't know anything. And now these kids are going, before they're ever even on dates with their girlfriend or boyfriend or whoever they want to go on a date on, they've seen each other naked. Yeah. What are we doing? Like, what backwards way have we created this world? And so we as adults need to stop looking to likes, because we're teaching our kids to look to likes instead of looking and saying, hey, you know what? God, universe made you who you're meant to be, and the world needs you to be who you're meant to be. Stop looking to other people to do it.
Yeah. And they're sexting one another. And like, when it comes to relationships and kids, like they don't even have what's your favorite color? Like any of that little conversations anymore. It's literally going straight to dick flicks or selfies and naked and nudes to one another. And this is as young as elementary and junior high, especially. So by time they go out on that first date, or, oh, let's all go to the movies, it's now, oh, I'm awkward because you've seen my boobs. You've seen my boobs, or you've seen my dick. And now it's like, how do I act? So now they're socially awkward. Or once they break up, especially in junior high, once they break up, and we know how quick those relationships last, the guys are getting their dick flicks sent around the campus in group texts. So now they know how long each guy is. And little do they know that is a crime, and like you can get in trouble for that. And so
these poor boys haven't even grown up. Like, give these poor boys a chance.
And so now they're comparing themselves to the boys. Oh, well, this so-and-so has a 9-inch or 4, whatever.
I'm like whatever. 2 probably. They're like, how old?
Yeah.
And so, well, you never know what they're putting in these food nowadays, but but yeah, I just remember hearing one conversation. I'm like, wait, you guys are doing what on campus? Like, not with my kid, but just in general conversations of like other kids who like have older kids and they feel comfortable talking with me or whatever. So I'm just like, oh my God, this is so sad. Like the dating for the world, it's like, there's no connection anymore. You lost the human connection altogether.
And like, I mean, this is all blowing my mind, and I'm like, props to
never having kids.
Straight up, I'm like, I don't know about all this, because this sounds terrifying. And I think like the thing about it too is like, it doesn't have to be terrifying, because we can empower our kids with knowledge about this and tools to handle it. But it is like, I think it's just crazy to think about, because I don't know a ton of kids, but I do know kids, and whether they're talking to you about this happening or not, it's happening. Mm-hmm. And it's happening to, maybe not to them, but it's happening to someone they know, and at school, and all of this shit. And like, I know, because think back to when we were kids, like there was shit happening on the internet when we were kids, and now it's like 100 gazillion times worse. Like there was programming in Disney movies from the jump, but now it's like you've got like I follow my like friend from junior highs, her sister's kid on TikTok. I don't even know how she found me or something, and it's like disturbing to me what I see, where I'm like, do I need to call her mom? Because
her mom probably likes it.
It's insane. Like she'll put stuff in her, like she stuffed her butt, because now like the butt trend, and she's like dancing and twerking, and I'm like, she's 9. Like,
right.
What? Like, and so what do we like? This is it is happening, and it does post. Like, I barely get on TikTok, but sometimes I get on just to like check in on her, because she'll post things too, like, I got this many likes. Like, how many did you get? And I'm just like,
right. Well, and the comment I'm going to make is nothing against this, like the whole rape culture. I don't think boys should be raping, or men should be raping women ever. That's not even an excuse. But I live in this world where I'm trying to raise like good men who will be good husbands and good fathers and all this stuff. And sometimes it's like, that's what you're giving me to work with as a potential daughter-in-law, or, you know what I mean? Like, what the hell?
Yeah.
on.
I mean, it's both ways, right? Like, and it's really,
Totally.
it just speaks to like the whole culture of, you know, these things. And that's why I loved your point about it starting with us, because, you know, like I had to stop looking at porn, and now it's been, I don't know, like a year and a half or something since I've looked at it. But it's like, cause I can't, what am I feeding? Like, what am I, and how am I going to be empowered sexually if I'm watching all these disempowered people have sex? And then it's impacting what I think is sexy. And since I've like stepped away from that, it's like been really healing and beautiful. And I think that we need to just look at what we're doing and mirror that for our children and empower our kids, like you were saying too, to just be weird, to be, you know, because how hard, it's probably hard to be the kid without social media.
Yeah.
But how strong is your kid going to be? You know, it is a balance, no judgment if anyone's kids do have social media, but it's just
not at all. But it's not just and this is where the kind of, I think the important piece of it is, it's not just no social media. It's here's why you're not allowed to have social media, because of these dangers, because of the bullying, and so it's not this idea that social media is bad and you never touch it. That's like telling a kid never to touch a stove. Well, until you touch it, you don't know what hot means. And so it's this idea that it's not that you'll never have it. And just because Instagram says at 13 you can have it, no, I don't feel like you're old enough to have it. But here are the reasons why you don't get it. And then when you do get it, at least now you're programmed to start seeing and understanding, oh, mom wasn't so stupid when she said that.
Like, don't we think if the government really gave a fuck about us, that they would make social media not available until 18? Like
1000%.
Because you think about the way like it's impacted us. Like I've cared about likes before, and I'm not 13 going through puberty with hormones that turn me into a psychopath. So
right.
Like, you know, like,
and then you just like, then you sit back and think of, for us, it's always if and when your kids do get it. For us, it's when is the right time and the education of it. So don't fear of using this app, or no, you can't use this app. It's like, well, this is why, and here's the education. If you're going to use it, teach them about the DMs, learn the lingo, learn what is being talked about at that age, and knowing about catfish. And yeah, this person might look like this, but you don't know who's behind that screen. You don't know who you're talking to and where this could lead. So it's not about putting the fear in like, no, you can't have it. It's just about having that conversation and having guidelines of knowing in the internet safety of it and the proper way to use it to prevent those scenarios. Or if you do get yourself in a situation, what do I do? Who can I talk to? Like, and just know the different scenarios of it all.
So what do you think about, like, what are some ways, let's say your kid does have social media, what are some ways that you can help protect them? Do you think that it's appropriate to like have your kid's password or to check on their DMs? Like what are some tips you would give to parents who are navigating this?
So this is not an ad, although I wish they paid me for as many times as I talk about it. I actually have a product called Bark, B-A-R-K. It is an app that you put on your kid's phone and you can have on yours, and it will go through and read through everything on there. Because as parents, we're too busy to be able to look on there. Now, do I think I should have your password? Yes, because I don't need to go in through it every night. I don't think that you should. But I can drop in whenever I want and I do it. And if you're doing something wrong, now we have to have a conversation. And whether that is somebody's bullying you and we've got to figure this out and you're too embarrassed to say anything, or you're bullying someone else and now I have to kick your ass. Just kidding, kind of. But Bark actually became really important. Like I said, my boys don't have social media, but they do text. They do watch YouTube. So those things will come through and say, this content has this in it. And you can say, yep, no problem, or go talk to them and take it off. But my younger son last year in 5th grade, he was on a text message, and it came up, and I get warnings, like to review stuff. And sometimes I'll be like, yeah, I'll review it, because 90% of the time it's just YouTube said Nerf gun. Okay, like whatever. And so I happened to pick up a bunch of them one day, and it was this conversations with these kids. And one of the conversations was that you guys don't even know how bad it could be. And my son says, I wanted to kill myself. Then he calls some girl or somebody said, you motherfucker, or whatever. And so again, like, my kid is no angel. I'm not even going to pretend. He still is only 11, but it ended up that one of the girls said, yeah, but you don't know what my stepdad does to me. And I think it was more abuse than it was like rape or anything that way. But I was like, holy shit, what do I do with this information? And so I took it to the teacher and I said, I know that this is way beyond your pay grade. I know that this isn't, I don't know how to get this to the parents, because I don't want to be that parent that's like, hey, your kids are being assholes to my kid. Why my kid's being an asshole to your kid? I don't want to do that. But this is important. Like, some of this stuff is really bad. And I know one of the parents, they were never home. They were both working. And so I don't think they knew that their kid was doing this stuff, but I would want to know. So I hope that you want to know. Well, ends up that nobody knew that this stepdad was hurting this girl. And last, my son said, he's in jail. Now, I don't know. I've not heard anything, nor do I want to call, but his teacher called me a couple times and was like, you have no idea how powerful it was for you to step up for these other kids in this group chat. But that's only because I pay every month to have this company look through all of my kids' stuff and do that. And they know it's on there. It's not hidden. So when I'll come and be like, oh, so I got a bark thing. What is this? And they'll have to tell me. So they know that I see all the stuff, or I know that a lot of times it'll be, because they'll come to me and like, I want to get out of this group chat. This isn't my thing, because they know I can see what's happening. And so we do stuff like that. And I don't use it to be like fear mongering, like I'm going to see everything you do, because truthfully, I can't see everything you can do. But I do want to see if someone's bullying you. I do want to see if someone's hurting you. I do want to see if you're being an asshole to somebody else and I need to beat you. I need to know what's going on. And this is just the only way. And they're not the only organization that's out there. There's a group we interviewed called Protect Young Eyes, but there's a lot of organizations out there that help us as parents help our kids. And that is what I think we really need to do, is make sure you have the resources available. Do you know, like Bridget was talking about, do you know what these emojis mean when you read through it? That's why they use them, because we don't know what the hell they're talking about. And so just being smart, doing your research, making sure you have things backed up, that the parent blocks are on as much as the parent blocks can be on, that they know that they're 13. Facebook knows that they're 13. They keep those blocks on. And I use block very loosely, but they keep those on in those areas. And I think that's kind of the best we can do. Like you said, this isn't meant to be shaming of parents who have their kids on social media. Just make sure that they're aware of what could happen so they don't get hurt.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, because it's just about the other people. And I love that you were talking about too, because it's not just sexual stuff. Like, there's so much on the internet that it can be, whether it be bullying and with suicide and just like, there's so much. So it's really just about remembering that, like, at the end of the day, like, we are the parent. It is our job to protect our children. And, you know, as much as society is saying like kids can decide their genders and sex and blah, 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 whatever, you know, like they
can pick out their clothes.
Yeah. For real though. And I think that, like, you know, just remembering that it's okay to protect the sacredness of childhood for as long as possible.
Yes.
Because
unconditional love too. Like giving your kid that attention, and whether they're like next to you and they're calling you and they want your attention, really take that moment and stop and don't scroll on your phone, and like give them your undivided attention and unconditional love.
Yeah. That's so beautiful. I feel like we could talk for hours, and I know you guys have so much information on your podcast. I obviously have only just scratched the surface of what you guys are offering. And so I would really encourage everyone to go over and check out the Save Our Children podcast. And can you remind me that website?
Yeah, it's actually standbysurvivors.com.
Standbysurvivors.com. Woo! Is there anything else like just heavy on your guys' heart that you want to say to parents or people out there watching or, you know, thinking about having kids? I don't know any of it.
I would say really just don't let the fear and living in fear control you or change the way that you live your life. And transparency, living in your truth, staying true to who you are, your intuition, and anyone going through adversity or dealing with adversity, know that you're not alone. Any survivor out there listening, know that you're not alone. We hear you, we see you, we stand by you.
Becky, anything else?
I think ultimately our goal is not to tell you how to parent your child. The one thing that I say at the beginning of our podcast is you are the person who knows your child best. Our goal is really just to give you the tools and the tips and tricks to try and help you do your job better. And so, no, what we've said today is in no way meant to shame anybody. It's in no way meant to say that Bridget and I parent our kids the best. You heard stories about how I don't. So, I mean, it really is meant to just be authentic. Here's what we do. Take from it what you like, leave what you don't, go research what you're not sure about. Again, we'll make sure to give you all of our Instagram stuff. If you guys have any questions, you can absolutely reach out to us as well.
Mm-hmm. I'll definitely link it at the bottom. And I just want to thank you guys again, because we'll pull a card here. But before, I really appreciate the way you guys just showed up and shared your truth. And I resonate a lot with that, because that's what I try to do, is just show up and share my perspective and the way I do things. So just the fact that you guys are having these conversations with your kids and sharing that with people and talking about the hard stuff and working on yourselves to be better parents, it's really beautiful to witness. And I'm really grateful to have you both here having this conversation with me.
Appreciate that. Thank you.
Yeah. So we have the Oracle of the Unicorns, and this is my first time doing like
we'll see if it works. Virtual.
But we all got our candles, and that was so fun. So I'll just shuffle for a second, and then I think we decided Bridget was gonna tell me when she feels the call for the card that wants to come through for the collective and anyone who's listening. Oh, I'll put them back in.
Oh, I was gonna say it jumped out.
All of those
jumped out. It was sanctuary and celebration. Oh. It says sanctuary, take time out from the world, spend more time alone, meditate or go on retreat. And celebration, a positive outcome is assured, celebrate your success and enjoy your achievements.
Those are for us. I love
those are perfect.
I know.
Especially I think celebrate for us is really big. That's so cool. Mm-hmm. We're going to be on our 20th episode. We've done this for how many months are we at? We started in April, 4 or 5 months, and we are at about 850 views of our podcast already, or listens to our podcast already. So Congrats. We can celebrate that. I think that's awesome.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And when I read sanctuary, I was just thinking, it says like, take time out of the world. Like, I feel like you both are just creating a sanctuary and a safe place for your children, and, place they can celebrate maybe, but I think it's okay to create that sanctuary for your kids that is like, in the world, but not of it in a sense, mm-hmm. and just creating that safe space for them to be open and honest with both of you too.
Yeah. And actually with that sanctuary one, I've actually been unplugged from the world for the past, 2.5 weeks, since everything going on in my world has changed. Just with everything going on with Coco and my family and sinus infection and teeth being pulled. So I actually unplugged from the world for almost the last 3 weeks. Mm-hmm. And now we have little small victories of recovery and healing. So I love that.
So that touches personally. I love that too.
Yay. And he jumped right out.
Right?
Yeah. Well, thank you ladies so much. I really appreciate you taking the time, and thank you everyone to listening, and let's carry more light into the world.
Thank you. Sending love, light, and blessings.
Thank you.
Still hazy, funk past J's and face of blunt ashtrays and skate with punk kids. I still chase the sun bad days. I'm lacing up half cabs and shake John spliffs. Whatever happened to rap, it should rest in peace to Mac, and I'm here to raise it from the dead. Cause drugs ain't cool, kid, plug you with that new shit. Turn water to wine and break bread. And if I said this all the future, would you trust I told the truth, or would you run away and tell my whole fan base? Cause sooner or later, kid, they'll take your human nature and they'll burn you at the stakes while the band plays. So, in the last words, better speak up now. I said, why do birds sing? What's a king without a crown? They all stood in silence while they listened to the sound of a madman reason with the demons he found. You can't lock up ideas, we don't even exist. I just live through the speakers and the beats that we kick. Is this forbidden fruit from the Garden of Eden? Is it freedom of speech, or am I speaking for freedom?